You aren't his mother, you are his kidnapper. And you are a murderer." The silence that fell over the dining table was heavier than the grave. My husband David dropped his fork. It clattered loudly against the fine china. My mother-in-law Agnes, who had been fake coughing into her napkin just seconds before, froze. Her eyes, usually filled with malice, were now wide with pure terror. "What did you say?" David whispered, looking from me to the woman he had worshipped his entire life. I didn't repeat myself. I didn't have to. I lifted the dusty, water-damaged shoebox. I had been hiding in my lap and dumped its contents right into the middle of the roast chicken dinner. Dozens of old letters, faded photographs, and a terrifying diary spilled out. "She didn't give birth to you, David," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "She stole you. And when your father found out the truth 20 years ago, she didn't just watch him die. She made sure he died." Agnes stood up, knocking her chair over. "Don't listen to her, Davy. She's crazy. She's trying to tear us apart because she hates me." "Sit down, Agnes," I screamed, slamming my hand on the table. "Or should I call the police right now and tell them what I found in the rat poison jar in the basement? To understand how I found the courage to destroy this woman, you have to understand the 8 years of hell I lived under her roof. My name is Sarah, and for nearly a decade, I was a prisoner in the house of a psychopath. When I married David, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. He was kind, gentle, and hardworking, but he came with baggage. A piece of baggage named Agnes. We moved into his childhood home temporarily to save for a down payment. That was the plan. But Agnes made sure temporarily became indefinitely. From day one, she made my life miserable. But she was smart about it. She never did it when David was watching. To him, she was the grieving widow, the frail old lady who just wanted to be loved. To me, she was a warden. If I cooked dinner, she would secretly dump extra salt in it and then cry at the table, asking why I was trying to give her high blood pressure. If I cleaned the living room, she would sprinkle dust on the shelves before David came home and ask why I was so lazy. But her greatest weapon was her health. Every time David and I talked about moving out, a miracle would happen. Agnes would suddenly faint. Or she would have heart palpitations. Or she would claim her legs stopped working. "Go ahead," she would sob, clutching her chest. "Leave me here to rot. Your father left me when he died, and now you want to leave me too. I guess I'm just a burden. I should just die and get it over with." David, sweet, guilt-ridden David, would crumble every time. "We can't leave her, honey," he would tell me in our bedroom, looking defeated. "She has nobody else. Since Dad died when I was 11, I'm all she has. I promised him I'd take care of her. I hated her. I hated how she looked at me with a smirk whenever David hugged her. She had won. She owned him. But cracks started to appear in her perfect performance last week. Agnes had demanded I clean the basement. She said it smelled like mold and was triggering her asthma. In reality, she just wanted to treat me like a maid while she watched soap operas upstairs. The basement was a dungeon. It was filled with 40 years of junk. Old furniture, broken toys, piles of clothes. I spent 3 hours moving heavy boxes, coughing in the dust. I was moving an old, heavy oak wardrobe in the corner when I felt a loose floorboard shift under my foot. It didn't feel right. I knelt down and pried it up with a screwdriver. There, nestled in the dirt between the joists, was a metal lockbox. It wasn't rusty. It looked like someone had been taking care of it. I knew I shouldn't touch it. I knew if Agnes found me, she would scream. But curiosity is a powerful thing. I used a bobby pin to pick the simple lock. It popped open. Inside, there was no money, no jewelry, just paper. I picked up the first letter. The handwriting was shaky, written by a man. The date was from 20 years ago, 2 weeks before David's father, Robert, died of a sudden heart attack. Agnes, I know what you did. I found the birth certificate you hid. I tracked down the woman in the countryside. Her name is Maria. She didn't sell him to you. You took him. You stole David from a poor woman who has been looking for him for a decade. I dropped the letter. My hands were trembling. David wasn't her son. She kidnapped him. I dug deeper. There were photos of a young, terrified woman holding a baby that looked exactly like David. And then there was a diary entry written in Agnes's handwriting. Robert knows too much. He is going to the police on Monday. He wants to take my Davy away. He wants to send me to prison. I can't let that happen. I bought the arsenic today. I'll put it in his tea. Little by little. He thinks it's the flu. By Sunday he will be gone, and Davy will be mine forever. I gasped, covering my mouth to stop a scream. She hadn't just kidnapped a child. She had slowly, painfully murdered her own husband to cover it up. And she had played the grieving widow for 20 years, making David feel guilty for a death she caused. I heard footsteps creaking on the floorboards above me. Agnes was walking around. I looked at the box. This wasn't just evidence. This was a bomb. And I was about to detonate it. I hid the box under my shirt and ran up the stairs straight to our bedroom. I hid it in my closet. Agnes yelled at me from the living room, asking if I was done scrubbing the floor. Almost. I yelled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. I waited for 3 days. I needed the perfect moment. I needed David to be home, and I needed Agnes to be in the middle of her act. Tonight was that night. She had started her "I'm feeling dizzy" routine as soon as David walked in the door because she saw a brochure for an apartment in his bag. So, sitting there at the dinner table, watching her fake another cough, I decided it was time to end her. "You poisoned him," I said, pointing at the letters on the table. "Read it, David. Read what she did to your real father." David reached out, his hand shaking, and picked up the diary. Agnes lunged across the table, grabbing a steak knife. "Don't you touch that!" she shrieked. The mask was completely gone. She looked like a demon. "He's my son. Mine!" David stood up, holding the diary out of her reach. He read the page. I watched his face crumble. The man who had spent his life trying to please his mother was realizing that the woman in front of him was a monster. You killed Dad?" David whispered, his voice broken. "You poisoned his tea? I did it for us?" Agnes screamed, waving the knife. "He was going to take you away. He was going to give you back to that peasant woman. I saved you. I gave you a good life. You kidnapped me," David yelled, tears streaming down his face. "I rescued you," she spat. "And I would do it again. And if this little witch thinks she can take you from me, she's wrong." She turned toward me, the knife glinting in the chandelier light. "I should have poisoned you the day you moved in," Agnes hissed. "I tried, you know. But you have a strong stomach, unlike Robert." I froze. All those times I felt sick after her cooking? All those stomach flus? She had been dosing me too. Agnes took a step toward me. David was too far away to stop her. "Agnes, put the knife down!" David shouted. "No!" she screamed. "If I can't have you, nobody can." She raised the knife and lunged at me. I braced myself for the impact, raising my arms to protect my face. I saw the glint of the silver blade coming down, but it never reached me. With a roar of pure adrenaline, David threw himself across the room. He tackled Agnes just inches before she could strike me. They crashed into the china cabinet, shattering plates and glasses everywhere. "Drop it!" David screamed, wrestling his own mother on the floor. "Drop the knife!" Agnes fought like a wild animal. She was biting, scratching, and screaming obscenities. "Let me go! She has to die! She ruined everything!" I scrambled backward, grabbing my phone from the table. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial 911. "Police!" I yelled into the receiver. "My mother-in-law is trying to kill me! Send help now!" David finally managed to pin her wrists to the floor. He was crying, his tears mixing with the blood from a scratch on his cheek. He looked down at the woman who had raised him, the woman he had nursed through 1,000 fake illnesses. "Why?" David sobbed. "Why did you do this to us?" Agnes stopped struggling. She looked up at him, her eyes cold and dead. There was no love there, only possession. "Because you belong to me," she hissed. "I picked you out. I made you. You are nothing without me." David looked at her with disgust. "You didn't make me," he whispered. "You stole me." The sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. When the police burst through the door, weapons drawn, they found a broken family in the ruins of a dining room. They handcuffed Agnes. As they dragged her out, she didn't cry. She laughed. "Check the tea," she cackled, looking at David. "I put a little extra spice in it tonight, Davy. I didn't want you to be lonely when I killed her." David turned pale. He ran to the kitchen sink and threw up. We had both taken a few sips of the tea before the argument started. Paramedics arrived and rushed us to the ER. Thankfully, the dose she had given us wasn't lethal yet. It was meant to be a slow accumulation, just like she did to his father. They pumped our stomachs just to be safe. Sitting in that hospital bed next to David, holding his hand, I realized the true extent of the horror. We'd been living with a serial killer. She had been poisoning us slowly for years, waiting for the right moment to finish the job. If you think this woman deserves to rot in prison for the rest of her life, hit the like button. Justice needs to be served. The next few days were a blur of detectives and lawyers. The evidence in the basement was overwhelming. The lockbox contained everything: the fake birth certificate, the news clippings of a missing baby boy from 30 years ago, and the receipts for the arsenic she bought back in the 90s. Agnes was charged with kidnapping, attempted murder, and they were reopening the investigation into Robert's death. She was denied bail. The monster was finally in a cage. But for David, the nightmare was just beginning. He was a man without an identity. His name wasn't David. His birthday wasn't his birthday. His entire life was a fabrication created by a deranged woman. We went back to the house one last time. Not to live. We couldn't spend another second in that house of horrors, but to finish reading the letters. I found David sitting on the floor of the empty living room holding a small faded photograph of a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. It was the woman from the lockbox, his real mother. "Her name is Maria," David said, his voice hollow. "She lives in a small town called Oak Creek. It's 3 hours away." He looked at me, terrified. Do you think she's still looking for me? It's been 30 years, Sarah. Maybe she moved on. Maybe she doesn't want to dig up the past." I took the photo from his hand. David, a mother never stops looking. Agnes wasn't a mother. She was a thief. Maria? Maria is a mother. Look at her eyes. "I want to find her," David said, standing up. "I need to know who I am." We got in the car the next morning. The drive was silent. The landscape changed from the city's suburbs to rolling hills and farmland. Oak Creek was a tiny, quiet town where everyone knew everyone. We stopped at a gas station. My heart was pounding. "Excuse me," David asked the old man behind the counter. "Do you know a woman named Maria? Maria Gonzalez?" The old man froze. He looked at David. He squinted, tilting his head. "You have her eyes," the old man whispered. David stepped back. "What?" "Maria," the man said, pointing down a dirt road. "She lives in the blue house at the end of the lane. She's been waiting for you for a long time, son. She never changed her phone number. She never moved. She said, 'One day my baby will come home.'" David started to cry. We got back in the car and drove down the lane. There it was. A small, humble blue house with a porch full of flowers. An older woman was sitting on a rocking chair knitting. Her hair was grey now, but the eyes were the same. David stopped the car. He couldn't move. He was shaking. "I can't do it," he panicked. "What if she hates me? What if she thinks I abandoned her?" "She knows you were taken," I said, unbuckling his seatbelt. Go meet your mother." David opened the door. His boots crunched on the gravel. The woman on the porch looked up. She squinted against the sun. She dropped her knitting needles. She stood up slowly, her hand covering her mouth. David took a step forward. "Maria?" The woman let out a scream that I will never forget. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of pure, agonizing joy. It was the sound of a heart that had been broken for 30 years finally snapping back together. "Matteo!" she cried out. "Matteo! My baby!" She ran off the porch. David ran to her. They collided in the middle of the yard, collapsing onto the grass, sobbing. She kissed his face, his hands, his hair, checking to make sure he was real. I sat in the car and watched, tears streaming down my face. This was the moment Agnes tried to kill to prevent. This was the love she could never counterfeit. But as I watched them, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the lawyer handling Agnes's case. The text read, "We have a problem. Agnes has hired a high-profile defense attorney. She is pleading insanity, and she claims David was a willing participant in the poisoning conspiracy to get the inheritance." I felt the blood freeze in my veins. Even from behind bars, the witch was still trying to destroy him. She wanted to drag him down with her. I stared at the text message, feeling sick. Agnes was evil, but she was calculating. By pleading insanity and blaming David, she was trying to create reasonable doubt. If the jury believed her, she might end up in a comfortable psychiatric hospital instead of prison, or worse, dragged David into a trial as an accomplice. I didn't tell David yet. He was sitting on the porch swing with Maria, drinking lemonade, listening to stories about the day he was born. I couldn't ruin that moment, but I knew we had to act fast. We needed something undeniable, something that proved she wasn't crazy, but coldly rational. We drove back to the city the next day. I went straight to the basement of horror. The police had taken the letters, but they had left the junk. I had a feeling there was something else. Agnes was a hoarder of secrets. She kept everything that gave her power. I tore that basement apart. I ripped open old cushions. I checked behind the drywall. Nothing. I was about to give up when I saw it. The old VCR player on a dusty shelf. It had a tape inside labeled David's 10th birthday. I plugged it in. The TV flickered to life. It was a grainy home video. David was blowing out candles. Robert, his dad, was laughing. Agnes was filming, but the tape didn't stop there. The screen went blue, and then it cut to a different scene. The camera was hidden, set up on a shelf. It showed the kitchen. The date stamp was from the week Robert died. Agnes walked into the frame. She wasn't acting crazy. She was humming a tune. She opened a cabinet, took out a jar labeled rat poison, and carefully measured a spoonful into Robert's favorite mug. She looked directly at the camera lens. She must have set it up to re-watch her work later, like a trophy, and smiled. "Drink up, darling," she whispered to the empty room. "This is for taking my son away." She poured the hot water, stirred it, and walked out of the frame. He froze. This wasn't insanity. This was premeditated, cold-blooded murder caught on tape. She had recorded her own crime because she was so proud of it. I grabbed the tape and ran to the police station. When the prosecutor saw the video, he nearly dropped his coffee. "This is it," he said. "The insanity plea is dead." This proves she knew exactly what she was doing. She was recording a trophy video. The trial was swift and brutal. Agnes sat in the courtroom, wearing a soft cardigan, trying to look like a confused grandmother. But when they played the tape on the big screen, the video of her poisoning her husband with a smile, the jury gasped. David sat next to me, gripping my hand until his knuckles turned white. He watched the woman he called Mum pour poison into his father's cup. Agnes stopped acting. She realized the game was over. She turned to David in the courtroom, her eyes filled with hate. "I should have used more," she shouted, causing the judge to bang his gavel. "I should have finished the job with you and that little rat wife of yours." The jury took less than an hour, guilty on all counts. Kidnapping, first-degree murder, attempted murder. The judge looked at her with disgust. "Agnes Miller, you are a predator who hid behind the mask of a mother. You stole a child, you murdered a husband, and you terrorized a family. I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." As the bailiffs dragged her away, she didn't look at David. She was muttering to herself, blaming everyone but herself. The doors closed, and finally, the shadow over our lives was gone. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. Maria was waiting for us at the bottom of the stairs. She opened her arms. "It's over, Mateo," she said, using his real name. "Let's go home." David Mateo smiled. A real smile, one that reached his eyes. "We sold Agnes's House of Horrors. We gave the money to a charity for missing children. We moved to Oak Creek, buying a small house down the lane from Maria. Life is different now. It's quiet. We have Sunday dinners with a big, loud, loving family I never knew existed. David has cousins, aunts, and uncles who tell him he looks just like his grandfather. He's healing. It's slow, but he's getting there. He's learning Spanish to talk to his grandmother. He's learning what unconditional love actually feels like. Sometimes I still have nightmares about the knife coming down. But then I wake up, and I hear the birds singing in the country air, and I realize we're safe. We found the truth in a shoebox, and we buried the lie in a prison cell. If you are glad that Agnes will never hurt anyone again, please subscribe. Justice is rare, but when it happens, it's sweet. And speaking of sweet revenge, you won't believe the story coming up next. It's about a lottery winner whose family tried to have him declared insane to steal his jackpot. You have to hear how he outsmarted them. Click the video on your screen now.